please.
Dear Lord, please give us the wisdom and courage to make the correct decisions today and always that will benefit the people of this constituency and indeed have influence worldwide. Give us also the will and foresight to help plan for the long-term future of all people near and far. We ask this in your name. Amen.
So, good evening again, members. Welcome to this January meeting of the Council. Firstly, I must advise members that from 7:30 p.m. this evening, there is a possibility that their Wi-Fi may be affected due to a wireless controller upgrade taking place this evening. I will therefore do my utmost to ensure that we conclude the business before then, which I think we probably will anyway. May I remind you all of some of the domestic arrangements. The toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it's safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except for there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this room, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can members and officers please ensure that you press the microphone for speaking and turn it off again once you've finished. We'll now move to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Creswell, Councillor Maybury, Councillor McLaren and Councillor Granger.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Ward.
And also Councillor Dawson.
Thank you. Declaration of interest by councillors. Are there any declarations? Thank you. Item 3, BC 1926. Confirm the accuracy of the minutes of the meeting held on 22nd October 2019 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Fine, thank you. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Osborne, Adrian Osborne. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ward, thank you. All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Item 4, BC 1927, to confirm the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on 22nd October 2019 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Fine, thank you. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Ward. May I have a seconder? Councillor Ayres, thank you. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Item 6. To receive notifications of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. Please be advised that we have received the following validated petitions. 111 valid signatures regarding planning application DC 19-04923 in Monks Ely, and 22 valid signatures supporting the following statement. We request that the bungalows numbered 1 to 2 Toppersfield Close be restricted to people aged 60 and above, returning them to their original restriction of residency to those of retirement age. Both petitions have been dealt with through the appropriate process. Thank you.
Yes.
We're going back.
I'm going to go back.
Item
Thank you.
5. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll return now to item 5. BC 1928, announcements from the chairman and leader. I refer you to paper BC 1928 for noting. Thank you. Now, one of the other announcements I would like to make is that many of you may remember Len Young, who was a member of this council for 12 years. He was the member for Glemsford and Stansted, and unfortunately he died very recently. So we'd like to pass his condolences as a council to his family and friends, and express our sadness and regret at his passing. So that's very sad news. I knew him as well. So that's one item I'd like to mention. Also, as chairman, I think I've mentioned before that I'm having a ball. And so I do hope as many of you that would like to do that kind of thing and support the charities in particular that I'm supporting. They're all Hadley-based charities because that's where I'm from. And I would love to see as many of you there as possible. It's on the 16th of May, and you can buy your tickets through Mandy. If there's any further information you want, I can provide that for you, or Mandy can. So I'd be delighted to see you. There are limited tickets. Now, Councillor Ward, have you anything to report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just before Christmas, and I think probably many of you may have missed it, Peter Garrett sent out a very informative update on what has been done by the Public Realm team and the extensive range of day-to-day activities that the team undertakes. Peter also said that the team will be offering ward tours to enable members to see the team's work at first hand in their wards. The things that the team does have a direct and highly visible effect on the quality of residents' lives, and there is a growing interest in the management of our open spaces for well-being and the environment. Our proposals for tree planting and biodiversity corridors will also mean working directly with our communities. Peter also mentioned a new 5-year programme of playsite improvements. So please contact Peter to arrange a tour and discuss improvements you would like to see in your wards. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Thomas Gainsborough School on behalf of the Council for becoming the first school in Suffolk to be accredited as a heritage school. This is in recognition of the work that students and also teachers put into the Sudbury Silk Stories project, and it is something that the whole school and community can be proud of. Last Friday, Councillor Jan Osborne and I visited the Sudbury Food Bank run by the Vineyard Church. We were told how the food bank operates and discussed the increasing demand that it is experiencing. It was a very productive meeting which identified some good ideas about how Babergh can work with the voluntary sector to help reduce the need for food banks, but also how we can also provide some practical help for rough sleepers. And these will be discussed with officers to see what we can actually do. Next week, there will be 2 days of consultation at St Peter's Church in Sudbury on several key aspects of our vision for the town. We will be presenting the results of a survey conducted by WSP on behalf of Suffolk County Council and ourselves into the relocation of bus stops and public realm improvements to the Market Hill. There will also be a presentation of the 4 proposals we have received for the reuse of Bellevue House, ideas for further improvements to the park, and also an update on the plans for a hotel and restaurant. All members are invited to attend a preview for members and Sudbury Town Councillors on Wednesday morning. And finally, just a reminder that Kate Parnham has sent out an email about the mandatory equality and diversity training. There are still some members who are yet to attend, and further dates will be announced soon. This is actually a very good and enlightening session, and I do recommend it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. So we'll move back on to number 7 now. Questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a point on item 6. You said about 22 signatures for Toppersfield Close. Can you confirm that is in Hadley, please?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Now we're on to item 8. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you. Now we're on to the main body of today's meeting, to receive reports from Cabinet members. It's my intention to limit discussion of this item to 30 minutes. I will therefore draw the questioning to a close after 30 minutes has elapsed if the item has not been concluded. I would like to invite Councillor Ward to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In front of you, you'll see the latest Cabinet reports from members of the Cabinet. And as previously, you've got all the reports in front of you. If you have any questions, then you can. The Cabinet members are here to answer those questions. What I would like to say at this point, that this is the last time that these reports are going to be presented in this format. What we are proposing to do is to enhance our quarterly Cabinet reporting in the future, to include more narrative and also aspects of finance and risk, and to beef those up as opposed to having these reports in this format. So in future, the best way then would be to look at the Cabinet agenda packs and come along to Cabinet meetings and ask questions directly then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, CMU 10, Cabinet Member for Assets Investments. Are there any questions? No questions? Fine. Then we'll move on. Oh, okay, we do have a question. Councillor Lindsay. Thank you.
Well,
Could
since
you stand,
Councillor Busby
Could you stand,
sounded...
please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to ask anything, but I thought I'd keep David happy. So it's just... It just occurred to me when reading your report and talking about trying to beef up the Bourne Shopping Centre, and you've got the... what's it called next to it? The other development they're trying that Babergh owns. Have you looked at, have we as a council looked at some things that Altrincham has done, for example, where they had a similar covered arcade and they converted it into a food hall, and that became a big draw, brought in lots of footfall for the town, and it's seen as the anchor piece for that town, and it actually triggered a recovery in the number of shoppers. Because at the moment it seems like we've got these units and we feel we have to fill those units and that's it, but maybe with some blue sky thinking you could get rid of all the units and have some kind of marketplace, a food hall, something like that. It's just something I thought I'd throw in. Okay.
I can't possibly answer that. I mean, you're right. Sudbury needs something as a focal point to drag people in, to experience the beauty of the town. Whether it's a shopping mall or whether it's something else, I think we're still working on those things. And hopefully over the next 3 months, you'll see quite a bit of progress on the direction that Sudbury needs to take. So, yeah, watch this space, I guess.
Councillor Mulvasey, was it a question that you had?
Point of information. I actually lived in Altrincham, and the building you talk about is a listed building. It was the original market for Aldrincham. It was a covered market, and what they've done by creating a food hall is in fact going back to their roots, because that's what it was. It was a place where you bought your food and was a place where food was also cooked. So it's slightly different than Boreham Gate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this paper? Fine, we'll move on then. CMU 11, Cabinet Member for Communities. Any questions? Councillor Hinton.
Just a quick one, Madam Chairman, really on point 3.1 of the CMU 11. The grants teams conducted site visits to discuss, etc., etc. You can read what's on there. When are there likely to be any decisions relating to those visits and those applications for grants?
I don't have a definitive answer for you. Obviously, once the work has been completed and a full assessment has been made, then they'll come forward. I'll find out for you and I'll get back to that.
Any further questions to the Member for Communities? Councillor Busby.
In 3.4, you talk about the strategic leisure advisor that's been working with the grants team, Football Association, to develop this local football facility plan. I understand that the person in question is coming to the end of their appointment, and I just wondered whether there's a contingency for carrying on afterwards, because I don't think we'll have got to a position where the decision would have been made.
No, I believe that will be ongoing, and I understand that the application has to be made by mid-February, but that will be carried on, yeah.
So the
applications, various individual applications are being made by mid-February. Yeah, we've certainly got one in this room, but also I understand Mid-Suffolk have got the same.
Any further questions? Oh, right. Yes, please.
So I don't have a question for myself, but I would like to take the opportunity of welcome Community's new corporate director, who's in the room tonight, Vicky Mosley. So welcome to the team. I'm sure she's going to be a valuable asset to all of us.
Thank you. If there are no... Yes, Councillor.
Can I just comment on the completion of the work at the Kingfisher Leisure Centre in Sudbury, which is now reopened with the new facilities. I have attended classes there, and they're absolutely full. You can't actually get into them. Must be more scope for running classes. Do you think there is, someone who is ensuring that they get the absolute best out of those new facilities? Don't keep us all waiting.
Thank you for that, and I'll pass that on to our partners, Abbeycroft Leisure, who have done an excellent job, along with our team, in making sure that the work was done. It hasn't been easy. We've had a few bumps in the road, but as you say, the end result is fantastic, and it'll be the same when we do Hadley as well, as we're progressing now. I'll find out for you to make sure that the management is up to scratch. With all of these things, there's always little things we can make better, but they're a great partner, and I'm sure that will happen. And I'm sure we've got Tom and Vicky here and Cassandra that will make sure that will happen. Thank you, Madam.
Just a quick one of interest, really, more than anything else. At 3.2, it talks about an increase in the number of calls by about 9%. What are we doing that means that people have got to ring us up more often? Why are people ringing us? Has anybody looked at why they're ringing us rather than just whether we're satisfying them or how long it takes to answer the call? Because I know that when I have called the call centre, in actual fact, I didn't get a satisfactory answer because I was told the person, they would have to take a message and pass it on, and the message was passed on, apparently, but never answered.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't obviously have the specific data as to what those calls will relate to. I think it's probably reasonable to say that as our digital transformation continues apace, then we're encouraging more people to contact us by various methods. But there are all sorts of reasons, possibly seasonal, why calls may increase. So I don't honestly know what the reason for that 9% is. I will endeavour to find out and come back to you, Councillor, if we may.
Madam Chairman, just to point out, of course, that here we're talking about calls, meaning telephone calls, not digital, as in going to the website. So it's not an increase in digital activity, it's an increase in non-digital activity.
Any further questions?
If I can assist just in relation to the other question, we had a fairly major election in that period of time, which did prompt a lot of phone calls in relation to making sure people were on their register, because strangely enough they had an interest in making sure that they voted. And people can't always do that online. There does sometimes require a phone call. So I suspect, although I wouldn't like to speculate entirely, that may have been a significant change to our normal, if you like, in terms of the times of levels of call volumes that we would expect.
Okay, we'll move on to the next paper, CMU 13, Cabinet Member for Economic Growth. Any questions? Councillor Owen, sorry.
Right, yeah, thank you. I've noticed a bit in the 3.6.
Stand, please. Thank you.
3.6, where we have continued to work with major employees, including the Delphi site. Have you got any more information on that, please?
In answer to your question, no, not at the moment. We will obviously continue dialogue with Delphi. It's been extremely difficult dialogue in that they haven't been fully willing to engage. But we continue to do that, and we will obviously notify members as and when we get some information on that. But at the moment, we have no more updates.
Any further questions? Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, also on looking at 3.6, we're talking about also supporting developers who are bringing forward new sites in our area, such as the 500,000 square feet opportunity in Brantham. Well, that's the old Waddle Story site, which of course has been sitting there for some time now. But what about the site at the top of the hill in Hadley that Persimmon sold us for £5 or whatever it was, so that they could build on the rest of the site? Are we looking forward to developing those sites or bringing forward somebody to develop those sites? Because it's not mentioned in here anywhere. And we don't have a very good reputation or outcome rate, if you like, in terms of encouraging new businesses into the area, or seem to have.
Sorry, Councillor, was that the land at the top of the Persimmon site?
Yeah.
Yeah. We will come forward with some options on that site as and when we have them available, and we'll bring it to members, bring it to Cabinet, and they'll be discussed accordingly. But until we've got that information, I can't really comment on that other than what I've just said.
Any more questions? Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to ask, 3.8, you've mentioned that there's large empty units in Copdog, which I assume what you're referring to there is the old Toys R Us site. Just wondering, as you've mentioned that there is some potential new tenants in there, I know that they were talking about that in regards to the Taylor Wimpey Wolsey Grade 2 development, as something might be happening there. So I was just wondering if you had any updates with regards to that at all.
So is that just to the Copdog one?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
No, again, we're working with agents and other bodies to try and attract new visitors to them. And really at this stage we can't really comment other than that. We are open to dialogue with agents and, as I say, companies that are looking to bring their business to Copdock. I mean, we've got Mothercare now vacant as well. So we've got, and the House of York, so there are several units up there which we are conscious of. But we are in dialogue with agents to try and get them filled as quickly and as best as we can.
Any further questions? Fine. So we'll now move on to CMU 14, Cabinet Member for the Environment. Are there any questions? No questions? We'll move on then. Oh, Councillor Hinton?
Yes, just basically on the civil parking enforcement. I gather that my contacts tell me that they can't actually enforce anything until all the white lines have been made or parking restrictions have been made legally compliant. In other words, the right distribution of signs, the right distribution of lines and T's at the end of them and all the rest of it, which is, I gather, a county council responsibility before they hand it all over to us. When is that likely to happen? Because I haven't seen a lot of activity in terms of repainting white lines, other than Essex, who are repainting the white lines down the middle of the road on the 137 so that they can then dig it up again when they fill in the potholes.
Councillor Malvesi, are you able to help on this?
I thank Councillor Hinton for his question. It's actually ongoing. I have seen things in Sudbury being white lines painted and yellow boxes and yellow lines. So the county is on it, but I will chase them up on your behalf. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Fine. So we'll now move on to CMU 15, Cabinet Member for Finance. Any questions? So no questions, we'll move on. CMU 16, Leader and Cabinet Member for Law and Governance. Any questions? No questions. CMU 17, Cabinet Member for Housing. Are there any questions? Councillor Osborne.
Madam Chairman, if I may just introduce the report, please. I'm pleased to present my quarterly housing report to members. As members can see, a great deal of work is taking place within the housing team to ensure that officers provide a supportive and fit-for-purpose service by coming up with creative and innovative ways, policies and working practices, as well as maximising funding, all under very challenging and emotive circumstances. I am very conscious that members need to be kept informed of these new policies and changes, etc. And with this in mind, I am having discussions with officers on the best way of achieving this. Once agreed, I will be advising all members what these arrangements are. Just to add that in addition to my shadowing officers in the Housing Solutions team, on Tuesday last week, I visited our operatives working on voids and responsive repairs. I visited 4 sites and met 8 operatives varying in age and experience, and it was a really interesting experience and a good way of spending a day. So I'm now happy to take questions, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question to the Cabinet Member for Housing. I do note that you've got here on 3.1 regarding the neighbourhood teams, focus on estate management. As you know, I've stood up in this chamber recently and complained about the bad carrying on our estates, council house estates, on the Greens wards and the verges and what have you. And I have seen that we've sent in an enforcement officer. He's certainly been into Cornard. Can you give us any update of how he's getting on and whether he's going to be going around the whole of the district? I believe he was hoping that there was going to be some support to help him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer, for your question. Yeah, the neighbourhood team is a very new team. and we're currently in the process of recruiting to that team. There is no feedback at the moment because it is in its early days. Once I get the feedback, I will report back to you as well. But also, just to add to that, Councillor Davis and myself have had several meetings with the police now from both sides of the district on ways that Babergh can work with the police to ensure that not just our housing developments, but throughout the area, that people live in a safe community and that their quality of life is improved. We are planning to hold, facilitated by both Babergh and the police services, a briefing for members, a workshop, so that we can brainstorm and bring ideas together. And that should be happening sometime in February.
Any other questions? Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, the development of a business case for a joint venture for the future delivery of building services. Can we be assured that any joint venture that is put together does have a quality assurance aspect to it? Because I have to reluctantly report that one of my residents had, elderly residents, had a problem with a boiler which broke down, which there was a considerable delay, despite this cold weather, before somebody came out to fix it. They fixed it, and 24 hours later it broke again, and there was a further delay before somebody came out to fix it, and 24 hours after that it broke again. It is finally working, but after a considerable period of intermittent hot water supply in cold weather, it's not good for the elderly population to be suffering in that way. So we need something that's going to make sure that the repairs that we make stay repaired rather than being just temporary budgets, if you like, to keep things moving.
I can assure you that will happen as part of the possible new venture. It is only an option at the moment. It's being investigated. However, away from that, we're still working on our building services to make sure that there's a good and effective service alongside looking at the options for the joint venture with Flagship. Blue Flame is very much part of that, and we're currently undertaking a review of Blue Flame, who carry out the repairs to boilers, etc. So it's not only going to be done as part of that investigation into that possible venture, but it's also being done alongside that as a day-to-day process.
Thank you. Any further questions? Fine. We'll move on now to CMU 18, Cabinet Member for Planning. Are there any questions? Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could I ask my friend, the Cabinet Member for Planning, whether it's possible that members of the Planning Committee could have copies of the latest 2 neighbourhood plans in a hard copy? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if it's a question on the report, but the answer to you is yes, of course they can. Yeah. Okay, it is available, obviously, via a link, but if you want a hard copy, you can have a hard copy.
Any further questions? Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Looking at 3.5 in relation to planning enforcement, we have been notified just recently that there is going to be a review of planning enforcement. I hope that all members will be involved in that, particularly the planning committee, because it does have a few questions to answer, and I think it's partly a question of resources and partly a question of management. I don't know.
Yes, there is a review of both enforcement and heritage, and he's not here this evening, but perhaps Tom could pass on my thanks to Phil Isbell, because she's done... No, I know Tom's here, but Phil isn't. Perhaps Tom could pass on my thanks to Phil Isbell for all the work that he's doing. We're making progress. It's going to take a while, John, but yes, the review is ongoing and it's already starting to pay dividends.
Can I just add for Councillor Hinton's satisfaction that it's actually on the scrutiny agenda for this next month's meeting, and we've had active discussion with Phil Isbell to determine what should be in that report to address, I think, concerns that many members have been asking of us for, well, as long as I've been on the council. So, yes, it is going to be a comprehensive review, at least as far as I can tell.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. So this complete... Oh, yes.
We You rattled through those so quickly, Chair, that I missed the opportunity to ask a question. On CMU 14, Liz? On 4.4, the Tree for Life scheme is going to close at the end of last year. Now comes the important work of distributing the trees. It says the 2 distribution sessions are being organised for Jan and Feb 2020. Can you give us more information on that? Because my granddaughter qualified.
Apologies. The Babergh one, I think, is the 1st of February at Hindlesham Village Hall. Yeah. But I don't think that's in the report. But now that you mention it, we had a total of 170 applications, which equals 23% of births and adoptions in Babergh. I think so.
Thank you. I think we can now complete this section. We'll now move to item 10, BC 1929, Overview and Scrutiny Committee report. I would like to invite Councillor McCraw to introduce his report, which is for noting. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chairman. I apologise for not having that ready. I was so busy going back to CMU 14. Right, I don't propose you'll be very pleased to hear to go through the report in any detail, because I think it speaks for itself, and it has been widely distributed through all people involved, the members of the Cabinet, all members of the Council, as a separate document, because well, we thought this was quite important. This is the only thing I'm bringing forward to you as a scrutiny report today, because of the general election. But I can tell you that we have already met 3 times this month as a scrutiny committee, either in joint or single session. So we're doing our best to do our catching up, and I will have substantial amounts to report to you in February. But this here now is the final result, the final report and our recommendations, which you'll find at the end of the report. As far as this council is concerned, those recommendations in many ways were already underway and under consideration. Effectively, we were pushing here, at least, at an open door. And I'm glad to say that the Cabinet of Babergh have already decided at the recent Cabinet meeting, they've had 2 this month, that the necessary review that we recommended could be carried out by a scrutiny committee on an annual basis, and I'm happy to accept that as a good idea. So you have the basic report there. We have hoped that this would be a resource, a piece of material to a study, if you like, to inform people, not just for now, but for the future. And we wanted it to be a document shared with as many as possible. Sorry to say, at the moment, it doesn't appear to have achieved a positive response from Suffolk County Council, as was reported at the weekend. But then again, it's early days in some ways. Budgets have not yet passed, and maybe other things could result. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Are there any questions to Councillor McCraw? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay. Oh, sorry. Councillor Arthey.
It's just a quick question, really. I was just looking through here to see if I could find what I think you said, which was that you will continue to look at this on an annual basis. Is that right?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Arthey. At the point of the writing of this report, that Cabinet meeting had not taken place. Our recommendation was that where multi-year deals were involved with funding authorities, that they be subject to a 3-year rolling system with an annual review and an inflationary amount increase. This was something decided subsequently. But as I say, we're happy to accept that point.
Would it have helped if the Suffolk County Council Overview and Scrutiny Committee had taken part in this process? If so, how will you try to encourage them to play a full part in future?
I think you address a very important point. This is something that's not often attempted across authority scrutiny process. In this instance, 4 authorities were involved. Ourselves, Mid-Suffolk, obviously, had already looked at it. We were joined by West Suffolk and Ipswich Borough Council. East Suffolk and Suffolk County Council were, of course, both invited. Myself and Keith Whellan, the chair of the Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny Committee, made approaches to various members, but obviously going through the chairs, as would be appropriate. In those instances, they felt unable to take part for one reason or another. I regret that because we found the process valuable. All the members involved, and it's interesting to note, they were cross-party. They were also cross-authority. We represented all 5 of the major political groups operating in Suffolk. And this is a Suffolk question. It is not something just that is Suffolk County Councils, and it's not just the districts, it's all of us. So in any subsequent event, yes, we would definitely encourage them, and we hope, in fact, we've demonstrated that it was an open process and perhaps not the closed-minded approach that they may have feared. I think we've demonstrated that we did a rather better job than that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor Ward.
Actually, it's not really a question. It's more of an observation on the first 2 recommendations about the amounts that you're recommending Suffolk County and the CABs contribute. I'm concerned that you've got specific numbers in there rather than just a general feel that where possible, if possible at some point in the future, if budgets allow, that they seek to review their contribution levels rather than putting in specific targets like this, which I think we know is difficult in the case of Suffolk County Council to achieve. And we all know that their budget is very difficult at the moment. So I think that would probably have been better if the recommendations had been phrased along those lines.
I think to answer that question, the general point was, of course, that we were not specifically making recommendations to an authority that was not a constituent part of the group. We made that point obvious in the report, and I might add, when we sent the report on to Suffolk County Council, we recognised that we had no formal reporting powers to them. Our formal reporting powers were to our own constituent councils, and that was the approach we took. However, it would have been ridiculous to have done this work and made these points. So the figures represented in A and B represent what had previously been provided by Suffolk County Council 2 years ago. We used that as a baseline, and considering the difference would be from the 120,000 that is currently proposed, 184,000, we are talking £64,000 a year. It is not a large amount, perhaps, in the context of Suffolk County Council's budget, but we recognise that that is a matter for Suffolk County Council, and we're not, we're making a suggestion. You can call it a recommendation, but the figure is a sensible figure, and of course it restores a baseline that previously existed. That was the reason for the figure.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to our next item now. Item 11, BC 1930, Aldham Neighbourhood Development Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey to introduce paper BC 1930 and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Arthey.
Thank you. Oldham. I'm delighted to bring the Aldham Neighbourhood Plan to you today for adoption. Those of you that know Aldham will know that it's one of our smaller villages, and it's got just 166 on the electoral roll. So this is the smallest neighbourhood plan that we've seen come to us, and I applaud the time and commitment given by all of those involved in the village. It is a concise plan. It focuses on housing development that is proportionate to the village as a whole and seeks to ensure essential characteristics of the village. It allocates 2 sites, small sites, one for 7 dwellings, that's already got planning permission, and one for 5. It includes a policy that supports affordable housing on rural exception sites and a policy that allocates Pump Green as a local green space. Paragraph 43 sets out the format of the question asked of those entitled to vote, and the results were the total number of votes 67, which was a 40% turnout, The number of yes votes was 61, which is 91%, with only 6 no votes, that's 9%. And I commend the neighbourhood plan to you and ask you to endorse the recommendation that we formally adopt.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Beer. I can open this up to questions and debate. Would anyone like to discuss anything with this? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say, actually, I'd like to pass my gratitude, actually, to the Chairman of Aldham Parish Council for actually communicating with me as a neighbouring councillor at Suffolk County Council, anyway, really to bring this neighbourhood plan to my attention. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fraser. Anyone else would like to speak on this matter? Thank you. Councillor Arthey, is there anything else you'd like to add? No. Thank you. In that case, we'll put it to a vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on now to item 12, BC 1931. Decision taken by the Chief Executive during the pre-election period under delegated powers in accordance with Part 2 of the Constitution. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey to introduce paper BC 1931, which is for noting.
Over the PERDA period that we were talking about earlier on, so the 8-week statutory period for the council to adopt the plan fell during a period where we couldn't do that. So my thanks go to the Chief Executive, Arthur, for doing that during that period, and the officers involved in enabling that to happen, Paul Bryant particularly, who is there. Yes, thank you, Paul. Just follow on with similar information to the Oldham one. The referendum for Elmsett was held on the 7th of November. The results to that were a total number of votes cast of 312, a 47.5% turnout on an electorate of 656 in Elmsett. The number of yes votes was 292, which is 93.6%, and the total of no votes was just 20, which is 6.4%. The Elmsett plan provides for around 60 dwellings to be built by 2036. 41 are expected to come forward on an allocated site that already has outline permission. The remaining dwellings are expected to come forward on small windfall sites and infill plots. Again in Elmsett, they've designated local green space, 7 local green spaces, and a special character area. The adoption of the plan in December and of Oldham's today, which you've just adopted, brings the total number of adopted neighbourhood plans in Babergh up to 5. Currently, there are 24 other parishes. This is a rise on my report, which I gave you earlier on, which I think quoted 22. Hitcham is one of the new ones, and I can't think of the other. So there are now 24 other parishes in Babergh working on neighbourhood plans. The figures include Lavenham and East Bergholt, who've already adopted plans, but are now looking to modify and update these, particularly with regard to the emerging joint local plan. There is on the bottom here a message which I wanted to give to all of you and anybody else who's listening over the interweb, and that is that those people bringing forward neighbourhood plans should focus on the land use planning issues that are important to the community, be realistic about how they can contribute to the wider need for new homes, and through the neighbourhood plans be able to add value at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Are there any questions? Any questions? Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't a question, it was just to, because it's not actually my Elmset and Aldham are in my county council division, and actually I used to represent them at the district level as well some time ago. But it was just to sort of congratulate the village, the communities themselves really, and the parish councils for going ahead with this. I know Elmset had felt they were kind of under siege from developers. There was all kinds of pre-applications going on all over the village, and the reason they brought this forward was exactly, I think, the right reason, so that they wanted development, but they wanted to be able to have some say and make sure it went in the right areas, not the areas that they wanted for open space and so on. So I think both villages have done a good job and done it in quite, particularly with Elmset, it was quite necessary that they got on with it quickly because there were a lot of developers hovering, and they've already been using it, even though it hasn't been until today voted on. They've been using it to influence developers and say, well, our local plan doesn't allow that, so we're going to resist that. So not only would I commend these local plans, but I'd commend other villages who feel similarly threatened to get on with neighbourhood plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lindsay. Councillor Parker, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councillor Lindsay's words there, Madam Chair. We're starting to see a large number of these plans coming forward. I'm fortunate that all of the villages within my ward have undertaken this, and I think that we should recognise the extraordinary amount of volunteer hours that is undertaken by members of our community in engaging with this process, and I think they deserve nothing but praise. Certainly from a planning committee's point of view, we've had examples of decisions that we've been able to take because neighbourhood plans exist, and I suspect it's going to make our life a lot easier. So I've got nothing but praise and applaud anyone that's involved in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Any other? Yes, Councillor Barrett.
Madam Chairman, can I just make a general point and question really on the neighbourhood plans, because I think that there's been quite a few communities who have undertaken this now, and I'm sure they feel very much in the dark when they first set out on this and need quite a bit of support from the council officers. Do council officers now have a really good system in place to do that, and have they learned from the process from when it was first sort of embarked on, so that they can deliver a very sort of productive and supportive role to the communities?
Councillor Arthey.
I don't want to put him on the spot, but I wondered if Paul wanted to comment on that. Paul is sort of the man who is engaging with all of these communities and ensuring that they follow due process, and has been involved in these plans coming to us for adoption. Paul, would you be happy to just say a couple of words on that?
It is an iterative process, and we've got something in the region of 52 neighbour plans or parishes working on neighbour plans or have plans adopted, and they do talk to each other, and we do encourage them to talk to each other. A lot of the initial part of the process around grant funding and how groups can go about getting that is something that we don't get involved in, that relationships between the groups and locality who are responsible for making that money available on behalf of government. So yes, we're learning lessons all the time, and we have a number of consultants who are preparing neighbour plans. They're learning lessons all the time from the examiner's reports. They're making sure that those lessons are implemented in plans that have come forward at future dates. And yeah, it's really about encouraging the groups to talk to themselves as much as anything, share their experiences with others in a helpful way, and hopefully we all get what we want at the end of the day, a plan that works for everyone.
Thanks, Paul, for that. And I forgot, when I was thanking people earlier on, I thanked Paul, I thanked Arthur, because of course they were involved in making sure this was adopted in the due time. But I didn't thank you because, of course, you were involved as well, and I presume you had to come in on the 10th of December to sign the paperwork. So thank you very much as well.
Any further questions? And I presume you have nothing else to add, Councillor Arthey. Thank you. Well, in that case, we'll take that report as noted, and thank you for it. And that really brings our meeting to a close now. The date of the next meeting is Wednesday, 26th of February, and that's at 5:30. So look forward to seeing you all then, and I call the meeting closed at 6:35.
Actually, there's another bit. Yeah.
Oh,
there's counter appointments that come off the bottom of that as well.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I don't know what's happened there. So go
sorry.
back to your original.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Apologies, members. My paper. I've been given some rather incorrect papers.
Yeah.
Silence, please, everybody. There's been a few problems with my papers, so we're now going back. I'm having to reopen the meeting again, and so where am I?
Item 13. Item 13.
Item 13.
Yeah.
Has been left off, so we're going to go back to the paper again, and I apologise for this. Councillor appointments. So we just need to agree the following appointments to outside bodies. Babergh Domestic Violence and Abuse Forum, Councillor Mary McLaren, the Suffolk Violence and Abuse Partnership, Councillor Mary McLaren, the Suffolk Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Derek Davis. Do we have to take a vote?
Yeah, just yes.
So can we take a vote on those appointments as a group, please? All those in favour, please. Thank you, that's carried.
No.
So now we can close the meeting, so I apologise for that error, and the meeting is now closed. Thank you.